Hello again everyone, my lovelies. Welcome back to my channel, and why don't we just go right in with the next chapter as you grab yourself something to eat, something to drink, just anything in particular for your comfort. Grab yourself that nice and fluffy blanket as the times get colder again, and let's head into Midoriya, Inko meets the League. Chapter 12, written by FangGirl48. Their link is in the description. There is an awkward silence that hovered over those at the table. The Bakugos were casually drinking their teas, ignoring everyone's presence as they waited for Inko. Sakauchi and Aizawa looked towards the living room and committed everything they saw to memory, itching to go over there and see if the League had left any clue as to where they were going behind. This left Toshinori with the daunting task of trying to calm Gran Torino down. "What is your kid thinking?" Gran Torino jumped around. Toshinori gulped. "Sir, please calm down." "If we had known the League was here, then we could have! Gran deflated, much like All Might used to when his time ran out. Only instead of the Chet hero shrinking, Gran Torino just looked exhausted. Finding the truth about the death of Nana's husband had hit Gran Torino especially hard. The hero still wanted to bring Tomura Shigaraki to justice, but Sorahiko Torino, the man behind the hero, wanted nothing more than to talk to the young man and beg forgiveness. Inko re-entered the room, placing some peculiar items on the table as she retook a seat. Toshinori chuckled internally at the sight of the notebooks. Young Midoriya must have picked up the habit of carrying such items from his mother. "To start with, does anyone have anything productive to ask me?" Inko folded her hands, leaning forward. "Mrs. Midoriya." Tsukauchi coughed, trying to get his bearings. This was not typically how interviewing civilians who had villains encounters went. But then again, most civilians didn't have the upper brass of the police force quaking in their boots at the mention of her name. "Can I ask you to start from the beginning? How exactly did you encounter the League of Villains?" Inko's eye twitched as she took a deep breath. The lawyer explained that she had been grabbed on the way home by some villains, that these villains were in fact trying to join up with the League and wanted to use Inko as their ticket in. Of course, when they found out that the League was rather angry with this plan, Inko spoke, her eyes sliding towards the former #1 hero. "If I had to take a guess, kidnapping is not a crime they wish to repeat." "I'll drink to that!" Mitsuki raised her glass. "Kamino seems to have left a sour taste in their mouths," Inko continued. Ikusu's own tumble with Tomura only adding to that." "I see." Tsukauchi nodded, writing down everything. "Is there anything else you can add? Perhaps some idea of where they are going next?" Inko shook her head. "Unfortunately, they didn't tell me, and what I was able to learn about them is not something I can share with you." "What?" Aizawa glared. "Why?" "Attorney-client privilege." Inko slid the stack of folders she had brought, placing them directly in front of the heroes and detective. "I'm going on record here and now that I, Inko Midoriya, have taken the members of the League of Villains on as my clients." Toshinori, who had been taking a sip of tea, immediately spit it back out. Masaru, sitting directly across from the hero, looked over at the wrong second and got a face full of the drink. Toshinori took a deep breath, his face reddening. Mr. Mr. Bakugo, I'm so sorry, The brunette held up his hand, silencing the apologies, pulling out a handkerchief from his breast pockets. No harm done. I'll just go clean up, Mitsuki. What? Miss Masaru gave his wife a knowing look. Behave. Mitsuki's eyes widened slightly before she smirked. Or what? You'll spank me? The brunette didn't answer. Masaru just leaned down and whispered something to his wife. Whatever it was had Mitsuki's cheeks flushing, though as she turned towards Inko trying to hide it. Instead, the green-haired woman just snickered and turned her attention to the others. Getting back on topic, Inko tapped the folders she had brought out. I've already talked to my clients. They are well aware of the charges that will most likely be filed against them. Sokauchi, who finally recovered, looked at the woman nervously. Mrs. Midoriya. I'm sure that Eraserhead is already aware of my efforts, chiefly with the arrest and prosecution taken against Hibiko Toga's parents. Inko looked at the underground hero. She wrote a small letter to Midnight and Flood King, if you wouldn't mind passing it along to them. Aizawa nodded and held out his hand. He had heard from Mike that the pair had volunteered to look after an underage villain. Aizawa just hadn't been aware of exactly who that was. Now that he knew, however, Flood's interest in taking them in made sense. Himiko Toga's blood-based quirk must have struck a chord within the man. Thinking about it, many of the UA staff had expressed interest in some member of the League at some point recently, especially since Problem Child's adventure. Whenever a new video or photo of the group surfaced, Aizawa could swear he heard Netsu cackling from his office. Mrs. Midoriya, please, I don't think you understand how dangerous the League is. Sokauchi insisted. That's right, Gran Torino added. You haven't met all of them yet, and trust me, the ones we've captured aren't exactly the cuddliest bunch. Yes, I'm aware, Inko nodded. I'll need access to them also. Them? Gran Torino asked. Which them? Inko leaned forward, placing her chin on her folded hands. All of them. Mustard, Muscular, Moonfish, Stain, and most importantly, Kurogiri and the Fiend of Kamino. No way! Toshinori slammed his hand on the table. There was no way he was going to let a monster like All for One near Inko. You have no idea. Toxic green eyes turned and pinned the former number 1 down. I am fully aware of what I'm asking. I'm just not sure you know why I'm asking. Mitsuki leaned slightly away from Inko. The woman was well aware of how terrifying her best friend could be when she was angry. Mitsuki didn't want to get caught in the crossfire if Inko blew her top. My contacts tell me that none of the people you've arrested have had trials yet. Inko spoke, her words cutting straight to the point like a hot knife through butter. In fact, no lawyer is even willing to take them on. Do you understand what this means? You are illegally detaining these people in Tartaros and Avernus. And what? We should just let them back out onto the streets? Aizawa hissed, recalling Kota's trembling form on his back after encountering Muscular at the summer training camp. These are all high-level, dangerous villains. Then let me help you! Inko yelled, startling everyone. Sokauchi placed a hand on Aizawa's arm, silencing whatever he was about to say. How can you help us? I'm not trying to get them out. I know that what some of these people have done. Inko took a deep breath, the image of Izuku's scarred arms coming to her. But I also know the law. If this information was leaked, they could get released. Let me represent them, and that possibly lessens. Sokauchi and Inko stared at each other. The detective's quirk told him that everything she was saying right now was true. For Haruto Matsuado, aka Mustard, the reality of his release was a genuine concern. The boy was only 16 when he was arrested, and according to the people in the facility, he was a model prisoner. If nobody was willing to defend the gas user by the time his 18th birthday rolled around, there was an excellent chance he would be released from Avernus. The only concerning voice came from the facility psychiatrist. Apparently, Matsuado had a fixation on the heroes Battle Fist and Real Steel. Itsuka Kendo and Tetsu, who had been the main players in his arrest. Taking a deep breath, Tsukauchi nodded, much to the hero's shock. Tsukauchi! Gran Torino started hopping again. You can't be serious! Listen, I don't like it either, but she makes a good point. And it is the most logical solution. Toshinori came to his friend's defense. I'm sure Netsu would agree to this idea. Aizawa huffed and slid down in the chair, burying his face in his capture scarf. Netsu would not only agree with this, the principal would have paid problem child's mother's fee if it meant these villains were locked away permanently. But there will be some conditions. Tsukauchi turned to Inko with a severe face. We can probably get you in to see everyone. Maybe Stain if we play the right cards, but Kurogiri and Kamino's fiend are out of the question. But they are who I need to see the most. Inko stood up, slamming her hands on the table. I need answers about Tamura. Shigaraki? Toshinori tilted his head, looking confused. You see? Inko started, looking nervous now. Her green eyes glanced down towards the 2 plastic bags she had brought. Tamura and he's... Taking a deep breath, Inko licked her lips, pulled the bags containing 2 brushes up, and put them on the table. One of these is Tamura's and the other is mine. I need the fastest DNA test you can run done on them. Gran Torino and Toshinori felt the air suddenly leave their lungs. Ever since Toshinori had met Inko, she had felt familiar, but he had just chalked it up to being nostalgic because of her hairstyle. My birth mother's name was Nana Shimura. Inko grabbed the picture frame holding the picture of her mother and brother from years prior. Tamura Shigaraki is my nephew.
What the fuck?
Everyone turned towards the door and saw Masaru, Katsuki, and Izuku standing there. The 3 had heard everything that was just said. Mom! The nymphed one-for-all holder said, taking a step forward. Is that... Tamura's my... cousin? Inko smiled sadly. Yes, we just found out. I was hoping to have something other than my word before I told you, but... Tamura's my cousin. Izuku repeated, his mind trying to wrap around this new piece of knowledge. That would mean I'm his... master's grandson. Toshinori finished, his blue eyes wet with unshed tears. Master? Inko looked at the hero in confusion. You knew Nana Shimura. She's the one who trained me to be a hero. Toshinori nodded, looking at Gran, who was sitting there staring at Inko in shock. Gran was her partner. I see. Inko turned her attention to Gran Torino. Hello. Gran just continued to stare open-mouthed at the woman, occasionally glancing towards Izuku. Can we all circle back for a moment? Katsuki growled, glaring at his childhood companion. Handjobs, your cousin! What the fuck, Deku? Next you'll tell me that bacon bitch is icy hot and icy hot are related? Izuku squeaked. The hero had promised Dabi he wouldn't say anything, but Todoroki had recently asked him more and more about Izuku's encounter with the cremation user, and according to Sero, Todoroki had recently put together this board to try and backtrack Dabi's movement before joining the league. Katsuki Bakugo, what did I say about swearing in my house? Inko scolded, ignoring the snickering form of Mitsuki as she looked at Izuku. Izuku, sweetie, maybe we should talk in my office. Privately. Okay. Inside, one for all.
I vote first, tells her.
Hikage rolled his eyes and looked at Banjo. Too scared to tell seventh to yourself?
No.
Banjo pouted, crossing his arms.
It's just that Seven likes first more. And ever since Nymph got back from his field trip, she's been huddled up deep in the void with Sunny all depressed.
Sounds a lot like you scared. And teased.
No, I just choose life or unlife or whatever the hell this is.
Banjo repeated.
I just don't know what to know that we can all die again because I can put my foot in my mouth.
First, or Yoichi just sat huddled in his chair, watching Inko explain everything that had happened through the nymph's eyes. It wasn't often the past users directly watched their youngest like this. Fifth said that they were spying on the person and not in an official hero way, but rather in a creepy all-for-one vaulting kinda way. But for Nana's sake, they decided to break the unspoken rule. Finding out that Nymph was Nana's grandson was a shock to them all. From what they had seen in Izuku's memories, he knew that his mother had been given up for adoption as a baby, that the Midoriya family who had taken her in had passed away when she was young. The past users never voiced it out loud, but they all knew that Izuku had been terrified of this as a child, of being abandoned by his mother for being quirkless. The nightmares he sometimes had during those dark times played out in front of them like a horrifying show. Do you hate her? Nymph asked. Nana, I mean. Sweetie, listen to me. Inko put her hands on Izuku's cheeks so he couldn't look away. Even if she had a good reason, I can't say that some part of me won't always be angry. I'm human. But it's a complicated thing, sweetie. But that doesn't mean I also don't forgive her. Inko smiled. If Nana Shimura hadn't done what she did, I wouldn't have met your father and had you. Banjo couldn't help but swoon. Ever since Nymph's mother had stared down, aved about the dorms, the Black Whip user had created a one-man fan club for Inko Midoriya. About that, Izuku asked hesitantly. He's normal, right? No life-altering secrets? Inko placed a hand on her cheek, sighing. Normal is relative, Izu, but to be honest, your father had some skeletons in his closet, same as me.
I hope the asshole choked on them, Banjo growled. Abandoning these two? Who just leaves a woman like that? I'll tell you who, an idiot!
Now that's something I would love to tell Seventh. Second chimed in, imagining her hunting him down and going full poltergeist. Can we even do that? Third asked. Hey, those hero kids probably think Nymph's already got some kind of haunted quirk. Thanks to yours truly. Banjo pointed at himself. Stuff floating around wouldn't even faze them at this point. Shh! Yoichi shushed everyone, watching as Inko grabbed a photo album off one of the bookshelves. A consultant, but for criminals and villains instead of a bank or a company. Inko walked back to where she was sitting. Hisashi always used to say that controlling crime was easier than fighting heroes. Hisashi? Second looked at Yoichi. Wasn't that? Holy shit, fuck! Banjo pointed as Inko turned the album, showing a picture of a haggard-looking all-for-one holding a crying infant form Izuku. He and her! Holy, oh my fucking gods! Congratulations first, Anne said, ducking into his collar. You're an uncle. Again. Before Yoichi could respond, a voice rang out. What's going on? The other users froze and turned to see Nana floating next to a fiery form. Her eyes were red again, showing that she had been crying once more. Seriously, I can hear you guys halfway across the void. He, you, I... Banjo, having no words, just turned to the others, tipping an imaginary hat at them. I'm going on a journey. Don't look for me. Banjo walked towards the edge of the landscape, disappearing into the black mist. Second got up, nodding at third. We should probably... Yoichi struck like lightning, grabbing onto the man's hand before he could disappear also. Green eyes glared up at his hero. Don't even think about it, my heroes. Yes, sir. Second hung his head in defeat. Aw, was that nymphed when he was a baby? Nana gushed, looking at the picture of baby Izuku in his first ever All Might onesie. Look at those cheeks! When Inko turned the page, Nana froze, seeing All for One's sleeping form underneath an equally sleeping baby Izuku. So, Yoichi moved towards the woman, biting the bullet. Long story short, your daughter married my brother. Good news is, Izuku's your grandson. Bad news. First put his arm around a shell-shocked Nana's shoulder. Welcome to the family. Banjo had just passed the halfway point to the void when he heard Seventh shouting, What? Well, isn't that a reveal to Izuku and the One for All holders? Let's see how it goes on next time. Don't forget to go click the link in the description or copy the link in the description to go and give FangGirl48 all the kudos they deserve, since they wrote this masterpiece. Without further ado, I'll see you next time, my lovelies. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.